What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we'll be covering the Purple and Black Luffy that released in OP09. At release, this leader was a solid option, with a nice mix of ramp and removal, but it sometimes felt like this deck was just missing something to take it to the next level. Well, that something has now arrived, with Starter Deck 26 providing crucial new cards that are giving us both a more consistent Dawn curve and a much stronger mid-game to go alongside our already terrifying late-game options. So if you were a fan of this leader before, or you want to grab a starter deck and try something new, there's no better time to pick up this leader and see what he has to offer. Now let's get started. Luffy's first leader ability provides some nice removal protection, as by attaching one Dawn to this leader, all of your characters will gain +1 cost. This works as a nice soft counter to other black leaders, such as Blackbeard or Rob Lucci, as it makes it a little more difficult for them to KO your characters. And once you become more familiar with some of the common removal options of different colors, you can preemptively attach this to your leader to protect some of your characters. His second ability forms the core strategy of this deck, as it allows us to offset deramping card effects that have us return 2 or more Dawn. The way this works is during your turn, if you return 2 or more Dawn cards to your Dawn deck, your leader ability will trigger and you'll gain 1 Dawn card as active and 1 Dawn card as rested. Put simply, this leader ability allows you to cancel out the impact of returning 2 Dawn and provides additional value as one of the Dawn you bring back will be active again. This can be a bit confusing, so let's look at an example. Let's say you're at your 2 Dawn turn and you activate Gum Gum Lightning. First, you need to spend 2 Dawn to activate this event, resting both of your Dawn on the field. You must then pay the cost of this event, returning your 2 rested Dawn back to your Dawn deck and going down to 0 Dawn. Your leader ability will then trigger, bringing out 1 Dawn as rested and 1 Dawn as active, meaning you're now back up to 2 Dawn, and you can now spend 1 extra Dawn for the turn. Our first goal is to use our leader ability to negate the cost of deramping card effects, which are often quite powerful since they require us to return Dawn. This can also lead to us gaining a Dawn advantage over our opponent, as if we're activating our leader ability each turn and restanding 1 Dawn with this effect, we're spending more than they are, giving us access to more resources. And speaking of a Dawn advantage, the second goal of this deck is to combine our leader ability with the Dawn ramping characters we have in order to reach the mid and late game before our opponent. This is a deck that loves to go first, because even if we do, we will still reach 10 Dawn first through this strategy. The final goal of this leader is to use our strong new mid-game characters for either offense or defense, depending on what that match needs, before tipping the scales with our late-game 9 and 10 cost characters alongside Gum Gum Giant. Deck building with this leader can be very exciting since we have many powerful cards to choose from, but the tricky part is figuring out which cards and how many of each to include. So first I'll talk about every card you can include, before recommending my starting deck list and then talking about the adjustments you can make as you try out this leader. To start things off, we have the 1-cost Law Searcher, who on play allows us to look at the top 4 cards of our deck and add 1 Straw Hat or Heart Pirates card to our hand that is cost 2 or greater. This restriction was intended to prevent you from chaining out multiple laws, but unfortunately it also means we can't use him to find our 1-cost Gum Gum Giant. With that being said, he does allow us to find just about every other character we run in this deck, so he's still a great searcher and the best one we have. Zoro is the first and the best of our Dawn ramping characters, as we can effectively play him for 1 Dawn while ramping 1 active Dawn at the same time. This is because of his on-play effect, where we may return 1 or more Dawn to our Dawn deck and then ramp 1 Dawn card as active. The key phrase from this ability is the 1 or more option for returning Dawn cards, and one that you'll see across the other characters that we run with this leader. Since we have the option, we'll choose to return 2 Dawn instead of 1, meaning we'll trigger our leader ability at the same time and have both effects activate afterwards. And for you visual learners out there, this means we rest 3 Dawn to play Zoro, we return 2 Dawn with his effect, that brings out 1 active Dawn, then our leader ability triggers, bringing out 1 rested Dawn and 1 active Dawn, meaning not only have we ramped to 4 Dawn, but 2 of the Dawn we spent to play Zoro are now active again. Now, a comment I made before was the new starter deck improved this deck's overall consistency, and the main reason for that is Zoro used to be our really only option at 3 Dawn that we wanted to see. And before you comment this, I know we could also use Black Maria at 3 Dawn to ramp, but at 2k power she didn't feel great to play, and it sort of felt like if you didn't have Zoro in your hand, then you were starting behind. However, this is one of the issues that the new starter deck solved, as we now have the 3 cost, 4k power, 2k counter Robin, who on play allows us to return 2 Dawn, and then set 1 Dawn from our Dawn deck to active. And while the writing might be slightly different, this works exactly the same way as our 3-cost Zoro, meaning we'll end the turn 1 Dawn ahead after we ramp with both this ability and our leaders. And at 4k power, all it takes is 1 Dawn invested to be at 5k and able to threaten most leaders. This also ties back into what I was saying about consistency, as we've now doubled the amount of cards that we want to play on our 3 Dawn curve. And as I hinted before, Black Maria is another option that we can use to ramp Dawn on our 3 Dawn curve. It's less ideal, we'd rather play Zoro or Nico, but again, it's better than nothing. The first reason is we can't actually spend the Dawn that we ramp, since her ability activates at the end of the turn, as well as we can only do it once since it's based on how much Dawn our opponent has. You first activate her ability during your main phase, where she adds 5 rested Dawn from your Dawn deck onto the field. Once again, assuming we played her on our 3 Dawn curve, this would bring us up to a total of 8 Dawn. The second part of her ability activates at the end of your turn, where you then return Dawn until the total number of Dawn equals your opponent, which in this case would be 2 Dawn. However, our leader ability would then trigger, and we'd add one Dawn as active and one Dawn as rested, but we can't actually use that active Dawn since this is happening at the end of our turn, and our opponent's turn would then start. And I know what you might be thinking, wait, can't we activate this again on the following turn to ramp an additional Dawn ahead? But because she always resets us back to our opponents, and then we ramp with our leader ability, this will only ever bring us one Dawn ahead of them. Meaning if you've already used this ability, it's pointless to activate it again because it will bring you to exactly where you already are, which is one Dawn ahead. With that being said, we don't hate to see this on the field. She has some nice synergy with the 10 cost Luffy that I'll talk about later, but in general, on a 3 Dawn turn, she's the least favorite of our options to ramp ahead. Not too much to say about Usohachi. He's probably the best 2k counter in purple, as he has a useful on-play effect. If you're at 8 or more Dawn, you can rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. This is a great card to have in your hand. You can just use him as a 2k counter, but especially in a meta that's filled with low-cost blockers, he can be great in the late game to get around and go for game. And speaking of low-cost blockers, this new Tony Chopper from the starter deck is a great choice when you face up against other purple Luffy leaders. On play, we can return 2 Dawn and then rest one of our opponent's Dawn cards or one of their characters with a cost of 1 or less. Now, we don't really care about resting one of their 1-cost characters. The main reason we want to use this is to rest one of their Dawn cards. This is because Gum Gum Giant is extremely powerful in the late game and forms the core of their defense, meaning they'll often leave 1 Dawn up to activate it, but if you're able to shut that Dawn off, all of a sudden both their characters and their life will become extremely vulnerable. Of course, this is more a situational pick, but green purple Luffy and blue purple Luffy don't seem to be going anywhere, so I think you can expect to gain value from this card if you include a couple copies. This Frankie is one of the deck's core pillars of defense, as not only is he a 4-cost blocker, but he has some added utility as on play we can return 2 Dawn, trash 1 card, and then draw 2 cards. This is a great way to trigger our leader ability, restanding some Dawn while also gaining some value and improving our hand. Another option is the 4-cost Onami, which some players like to use as this card has more value in the late game since we don't need to return any Dawn, but we still activate a similar effect. We then have the 5-cost Sanji, a mid-game option with nice synergies with our leader. On play, if you have a cost 6 or greater character in play, KO one of your opponent's cost 5 or lower characters. The strategy here is to attach 1 Dawn to our leader before playing this Sanji, as once he comes out, he'll be treated as a 6-cost character and trigger his own effect. In the past, this was the card we wanted to play after Zoro, as by ramping 1 ahead, our 5 Dawn turn would become our 6 Dawn turn, meaning we'd have an extra Dawn to attach to our leader in order to activate this Sanji's effect. And while it can still be useful, we've now got some better options to play on our 6 Dawn turn. Starting with the new 6-cost 7k power Monkey D. Luffy, which in my opinion is the best new addition and strongest new card in this deck. On play and when attacking, you may return 2 Dawn. If your leader is multicolored, your opponent has 5 or more Dawn on the field, and your leader is a Straw Hat crew, their base power becomes 7,000 until the end of your opponent's next turn. Now that's a lot of writing, but all you need to take away is if you play or attack with this card and your opponent has at least 5 Dawn on the field, your leader will become 7,000 base power until the end of their turn. This ability is absolutely fantastic for this leader. It has both offensive and defensive purposes. You'll be 7k for both yours and your opponent's turn. Not only that, but the entire cost is going to be offset by your leader ability. And once you get this card on the field, both it and your leader will be at 7k power, which are pretty difficult numbers to deal with, as your opponent will have to invest some significant Dawn to try and threaten them. For a more aggressive option, we have the 6-cost 7k power Luffy from EBO2, who has Rush and the ability to restand by sacrificing a life. His versatility reads, if your leader is multicolored and your opponent has 5 or more Dawn, this character gains Rush. He then has the one attacking effect where you can return 2 active Dawn and set him to active again. But then you will add the top card of your life to your hand. And this will trigger our leader ability, so it's more like returning 1 active Dawn since we'll gain 1 active one back. Attacking twice is very powerful, but losing a life is also a very high cost, so make sure you're not using this ability if it's going to put you in a position to lose on the following turn. But on the flip side, another attack can often be exactly what you need in order to finish out a game. The main downside for this card is going to be its price. It's currently about 80 USD, and you do want to run a couple copies, so if you're looking for a more budget-friendly option, I would recommend running more copies of the 7-cost Sanji that we're going to cover shortly. And this may just be my hot take, but I think the 5-cost Sanji and Pudding could be a nice alternative option for this leader. To start, this card is 5 cost and 7k power, so even if we're unable to ramp, we can still play this on our 3rd turn if we go first. But the main value is from its ability, where once per turn, whenever 2 or more Dawn are returned to our Dawn deck, we get to set 1 Dawn from our Dawn deck as active. If we're able to keep this card on the field when we activate our other Dawn returning effects, this means that every time we return 2 Dawn, we'll bring 3 back onto the field, and 2 of them will be active again. But let me know in the comments, am I onto something here, or is this a terrible idea? This Sanji is a standard 2k counter, but with the many deramping cards that this deck has to offer, we can also take advantage of his ability. While he's in our hand, if our opponent has 2 or more Dawn more than us on the field, his cost is reduced by 3. Meaning we can now play him for 3 Dawn. And playing a 6-cost, 6k power character for only 3 Dawn can be very useful, especially when we need a blocker in a pinch. This 7-cost Sanji provides a nice mixture of both aggression and control, as on play we can return 1 or more Dawn, he gains Rush, and then we can rest one of our opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less. This is great for either getting around blockers or targeting one of our opponent's characters, as we can both rest it and attack them with Sanji on the same turn that he is played. You'll notice that his ability reads just like Zoro's, meaning we can return 1 or more Dawn, so we will choose once again to return 2 and benefit from our leader ability. We then have the 8-cost Katakuri, which is a card I'm a fan of, an 8-cost 8k power blocker with the end of turn ability to set 2 of your Big Mom Pirates type characters with a cost of 3 or more as active, then add 1 card from your Dawn deck as rested. The first benefit of this card is we can both attack and block with him, since once we attack at the end of our turn, we'll be able to restand him once again. The second benefit is the 1 additional Dawn, as with so many deramping abilities, this can sometimes offset it and allow us to use multiple on the same turn. And if we follow this deck's core strategy and ramp 1 ahead on our 3 Dawn turn, this means the following 5 Dawn turn becomes our 6 Dawn turn, we play one of our 6-cost Luffys, and exactly on the next turn, we can play this 8-cost Katakuri on curve. And while this might sound counterintuitive, I feel like this card loses value if we're running the 10-cost Luffy because it stays on the field so nicely that it feels like we're not benefiting fully from its effect since we're going to remove it with our own character's ability. That doesn't mean it has no value, as you'll still be able to block with it for 1 turn and then attack with it before dropping down the 10-cost Luffy, but you get the idea. I just feel like this is a card that gains its most value if it sticks on the field for a few turns. We then have the 9-cost 10k power Luffy, who on play allows you to return 1 or more Dawn, draw a card, and then he gains Rush for this turn. This is a great late game aggressive option. Being 10k power means he'll be able to threaten most cards on the field, and by returning 2 Dawn, we'll also restand 1, effectively playing him for 8. We then have the 10-cost Luffy, who probably has the strongest ability in the game, but it comes at the cost of returning both all of our Dawn and all of our characters back into our deck. On play, by returning all 10 Dawn back into our Dawn deck and placing any other character at the bottom of our deck, we get to take another turn after this one ends. This essentially means this card will have Rush, since we will play him and attack before our opponent has a chance to do anything. This can also be used to deal a finishing blow to our opponent, as when we combine this with our leader ability, on the following extra turn we take, we'll be able to swing 10k and 12k. Let me explain. To start, we'll return all 10 Dawn and trigger our leader ability, bringing 1 Dawn out as active and 1 Dawn as rested. We will then use that 1 active Dawn for this Luffy's second ability, an activate main effect, where by spending 1 Dawn, we can bring out 1 Dawn from our Dawn deck as active. You could also attach that 1 Dawn to your leader and swing 6k for this turn. You will then end your turn, and right after this, your second turn will begin. From here, you will both draw an additional card, and then add 2 cards from your Dawn deck, bringing your total up to 5 Dawn. And if you were at a point where a 10k swing from leader and a 12k swing from this Luffy was enough to finish the game, you could go ahead and do that. If you were not sure that that would close out the game, you could instead play the 6-cost Sanji from your hand, as it's now only 3 Dawn since your opponent has 2 or more Dawn than you on the field. And if you wanted to ramp right back up, you could play Black Maria and use her effect to bring you up to 10 Dawn if your opponent was already at that. And by using this Luffy's ability again on your second turn, that would bring your total Dawn up to 6, meaning even though you just returned all 10 on the previous turn, once your opponent goes, you'll be right back up to 8 Dawn. The final thing to note is players are finding success both with the 9-cost and 10-cost Luffy, but not with both in the same deck. Which means you'll have to make a decision of which one is calling to you, as they both have powerful effects, but they do have a different playstyle. Moving on to events, I'm sure you're tired of seeing this card, but Gum Gum Giant is just an amazing counter in the late game, allowing you to return 2 Dawn and trashing a card, before giving a 4000 power boost to one of your leaders or characters, and then drawing 2 cards. The only thing I want to highlight here is even though we're returning 2 or more Dawn, this is happening on our opponent's turn when they declare an attack, so we will not benefit from our leader ability. And while we are a half-black leader, this deck isn't running that much removal, so the 2-cost Gum Gum Lightning is a nice way to KO one of your opponent's 6k power or lower characters. Its trigger can also be useful, allowing us to add 1 Dawn card from our Dawn deck and set it as active. We also have the 2-cost Top Knot, who has a similar effect, but is great for targeting cards with KO protection, such as Jesus Burgess, since instead of KOing, it targets a character with a cost of 4 or less and places them at the bottom of its owner's deck. If instead you felt like this deck was missing high-cost removal, you could include the 5-cost Ragnarok, where by returning 1 Dawn, you can KO one of your opponent's 8-cost or lower characters. And finally, if you were having trouble with either Zoro or Bella Betty, cards that bring out multiple characters at once, the 6-cost Liberation could be a nice option, as it will allow you to remove 2 of their characters at the same time. For the starting deck list, my goal was to take a balanced approach and include as many of the different options as possible. This list is meant to be a starting point for you to find the cards you enjoy playing, remove the ones you don't, and start to adjust this list to match your preferred playstyle. One of the best parts about this game is there's so much room for creativity, so don't feel pressured into copying exactly what other players are doing. As an example, once you start trying out this leader, you may believe that it's in the mid game that this deck really shines, and revise your strategy to focus on 7 to 8 Dawn turns. If that's the case, you're likely going to drop your higher cost characters and focus on your 6 and 7 cost cards to increase the chances of finding them. This deck takes a more aggressive approach. You're looking to overwhelm your opponent in the mid game, and you care less about making it all the way to 10 Dawn, as once you hit 7 or 8, you'll likely be activating multiple effects on the same turn to return that Dawn. In contrast, another player might really like the defensive and utility options of this leader and focus more on the 6-cost starter deck Luffy into 8-cost Katakuri into the 9-cost Luffy. This deck list won't have the same mid-game pressure as the previous one, however, their late-game board presence will be stronger, with the Katakuri blocker for added defense and the 10k power Luffy to apply pressure beginning on their 9 Dawn turn. Moving on to the Dawn curve, we generally like to go first, but we still have some solid options when going second. At 1 Dawn, we'll want to play our 1-cost Law Searcher or a 1-cost Event Searcher to add one of our core cards to play on the following turn. At 3 Dawn, our goal is to start ramping Dawn, so we want to play either Zoro, Nico Robin, or Black Maria to begin that effect. and you would play them in that priority, meaning if you had all 3 in your hand, you would play Zoro. And since our goal is to ramp on our second turn, our 5 Dawn turn should become our 6 Dawn turn, which gives us a few different options. The first is the new starter deck Luffy. Just note that our opponent will only be 4 Dawn at this point, meaning we can't activate his ability, but we can still return 2 Dawn if we want to trigger our leader ability and get one of them back. If we're instead looking for some control, we can attach 1 Dawn to our leader and then drop down the 5-cost Sanji to take out one of their 5-cost or lower characters. And we could also play the EBO2 Luffy. Just note that once again, since our opponent won't have 5 Dawn, he won't have Rush just yet. At 8 Dawn, we can also play the EBO2 Luffy, and now we can get aggressive with him since we'll have 2 active Dawn up, meaning we can attack with him, activate his ability, send the 2 active Dawn back, and then attack with him again. The 7-cost Rush Sanji is another great option here, allowing us some more control as we can rest one of our opponent's characters and then target them with an attack. We could also choose to drop down the 8-cost Katakuri at this time. At 10 Dawn, we can drop down the 9-cost Luffy, applying some immediate pressure at 10k power while still leaving up 1 Dawn for our Gum Gum Giant. We can also drop down the 10-cost Luffy, returning all of our Dawn but getting an extra turn and bringing out a 12k powered character. Going second, we have a similar strategy. On turn 1, we want to get off our 1-cost searchers, but in the event we had 2 in our hand, we can play down both of them. And we are searching for one of our ramping cards or the starter deck Luffy. At 4 Dawn, we want to bring out one of our 3-cost rampers, and a cool strategy we can do is actually bring out Zoro and Nico Robin on this turn. First, you play Nico Robin, activate her effect, and return 2 rested Dawn. You'll then have 1 Dawn is active and 1 Dawn is rested, but then both hers and our leader ability will trigger, bringing back 2 active Dawn and 1 rested one for a total of 5 Dawn. And with that 3 active Dawn, we can play Zoro, but remember, our leader ability only triggers once per turn, so do not return 2 Dawn with his effect, as that will deramp you. Instead, just return 1, which you'll bring back out as active, meaning on your 4 Dawn turn, you can play Nico Robin, play Zoro, and still swing 6k with your leader. Another option for some early game removal is to combine Zoro with Gum Gum Lightning. This can be especially powerful against the blue-purple Luffy, who often drop down Zoro Juro on their 3 Dawn turn, and we can remove it before it has a chance to attack. Just remember to only send back 1 Dawn with Zoro's effect, because if you send back 2 with Zoro and activate Gum Gum Lightning on the same turn, you'll actually deramp yourself in the process. On your 3rd turn, you should be at 7 Dawn, but even if you're only at 6, we can now take advantage of all of our mid-range characters, since your opponent will have 5 rested Dawn, meaning you can attack immediately with the EBO2 Luffy, activate your other Luffy's effect, or use Sanji's effect to KO one of their characters. At this time, we could also use the 7-cost Sanji to rest one of their characters and take them out with Rush. At 9 Dawn, we can start to get aggressive with our 6-cost EBO2 Luffy if we wanted to, returning 2 active Dawn and then swinging twice with 7 or 8k. Or we can drop down our 9-cost Luffy, swing 10k immediately and draw a card. Or drop down the 8-cost Katakuri and start getting defensive with an 8k power blocker. At 10 Dawn, we could drop down the 10-cost Luffy, or continue to drop down our previous high-powered characters while leaving up 1 Dawn to activate Gum Gum Giant. This is also where the game becomes more situational, as you'll drop down either blockers or use other events as needed as the game develops. The first strength of this leader is our very powerful mid-game tempo, as we have a consistent ramping strategy and excellent characters to play for every situation, be it defense, offense, or board control. The defensive power of this leader should not be underestimated, as with the new starter deck Luffy, we are essentially a 7k power leader from our 6 Dawn turn and onwards. Combine that with the many 2k counters we run and Gum Gum Giant, and we are just extremely difficult to deal with in the late game. The main weakness for this leader is we have 0 removal protection. Outside of our +1 cost, we have nothing that can prevent or protect our characters from either being sent back to our hand, bottom decked, or KO'd. We have seen other colors get some sort of removal protection in the form of 2k counters or small blockers, so hopefully purple has something similar in the future. But then again, every color can't have everything, that's why we have strengths and weaknesses, so we'll see what the future holds. Our games today are against Blue-Purple Luffy, the most popular leader out there and one you should expect to see as you get to know this leader. The first thing to think about is what is our goal when playing against Blue-Purple Luffy? Well, we know that this leader is at its strongest in the late Dawn turns, as once they hit 8 Dawn, they'll start drawing an additional card, and once they hit 9 Dawn or higher, they can start using Sanji to chain out multiple characters. And so our first goal is going to be to slow them down. This won't always be possible, as some of the ramping is on-play effects that we can't stop, but if they put down the 3-cost Zoro Juro, we do want to try and use one of our removal options to get rid of him before he has a chance to attack. Another goal, while a little harder to achieve, is to win the coin toss and go first, as this is going to improve our odds. And while their late game is stronger than ours, we're going to push our advantage in the mid game, as outside of their ramping cards and a little bit of removal, they really have nothing outside the 5-cost Nami before their 8 Dawn turn. We have many great options, being the 6-cost starter deck Luffy, the EBO2 Luffy, the 7-cost Sanji. We have many different resources, and we need to establish a better board over them as we prepare for the late game. As I mentioned before, they thrive in the late game, but that doesn't mean that once it hits 10 Dawn, the game is over. But turn for turn from here on out, they will out-resource you, so we need a strong board or a life advantage at this point to be able to finish the game before they win a war of attrition from just drawing 2 cards every turn. And they aren't the only one with a late game threat. You can use the 10-cost Luffy as a finishing punch, or even to just establish him on the board, as a 12k power 10-cost character is very difficult for them to deal with. When thinking about when to mulligan, we're mainly looking for one of our 3-cost rampers, followed by the 6-cost starter deck Luffy, and we have both in our hand, so we're not going to. Turn 1 we have nothing to play, so we end our turn, and Blue Purple Luffy usually has nothing to play until the 3 Dawn turn, so they pass it right back to us. From here we want to get into our ramping strategy, dropping down Zoro, returning 2 Dawn, and then swinging 7k with our leader, as we've successfully ramped to 4 Dawn. We have a very powerful 3 Dawn play, as we both developed our board, ramped Dawn, and could still threaten their leader with a 7k swing, which is successful, so we bring him down to 2 life and end our turn. For his 4 Dawn turn, he activates Gear 2, which allows him to rest 3 Dawn and then bring out 1 extra Dawn as rested from his Dawn deck. With his 1 remaining Dawn, he attaches to leader and swings 7k, which we're not going to counter out of, and then we add a 2k counter to our hand, and then draw another 2k counter to start our turn. The nice thing about him ramping 1 Dawn is he's now at a total of 5, meaning we can immediately benefit from our starter deck Luffy. So we drop him down and return 2 Dawn, giving our leader 7k base power, and then with our 1 remaining Dawn we get back from our leader ability, we can swing 6k with Zoro, followed by 7k with our leader. So we first attack with Zoro, and he uses a 1k counter Nami to get out. We immediately follow this with our 7k power leader, and he uses a 2k counter Usohachi to remain at 2 life. He then starts his 7 Dawn turn, as he ramped 1 before, and uses Gum Gum Red Rock on our 6 cost Luffy. He then leaves 1 Dawn up and swings 6k out of rested Zoro, and I decide that a 2k counter is worth it to keep him on the board and threaten another attack on the following turn. At 6 Dawn, we would love to see another starter deck Luffy or the EBO2 Luffy, but another solid option is this 8 cost Katakuri. We then immediately end our turn since we spent all of our Dawn and we can't threaten his 6k power leader. He's now at 9 Dawn, meaning he can play any character in his deck. However, since he was not at 8 Dawn in the previous turn, this means he wasn't able to organize his top cards. So if he does have Sanji in his hand, he'll be playing it blind and revealing the top card of his deck. He decides to go for it anyways and actually hits Katakuri, so overall this was a great decision by him. The good news is he spent all his Dawn, meaning there's not one up for either Gear 2 or Gum Gum Giant, and we can just block his leader with our own Katakuri. We then start our own 10 Dawn turn, but unfortunately the highest character we have is a 4 cost, meaning we don't have either our 9 or 10 cost Luffy or either 6 cost Luffys, so we're gonna have to get creative here. Now I could decide to go for 3 big hits, but I still want to develop my board, and I decide the best thing to do here is just to go wide. So we'll start with Zoro, but only return 1 Dawn, since I want to drop down Frankie, as he's the only card in my hand that will allow me to draw additional cards. I do that right after, and since I only have 2k counters in my hand, I get rid of Black Maria, and luckily we finally get a boss monster, the 9 cost Luffy. With 5 Dawn remaining, I don't have anything else in my hand that I can play at this time, so I'm going to use it to swing for some attacks. To start things off and just test the waters, I attach 1 Dawn to Zoro and swing 6k. He uses the 5 cost 1k Nami to counter out. I then decide for my 2 remaining attacks I want to go big, as even if he blocks with his Katakuri, I still want another card out of his hand or to take a life. So we bring him down to 1 life, and then I decide to swing 9k with Katakuri, meaning even if he blocks with his own Katakuri, he'll still need a 2k counter. If I was at 1 or 2 life, I might rethink this, but with 3 life and 2 blockers on the field, I'm not worried about losing next turn. And since I'll restand Katakuri, I'm not worried about losing him to a big attack. Turns out he doesn't have a 2k counter, but discards 2 cards to keep his Katakuri alive. He then doesn't draw any cards with his leader ability, which is pretty unlucky since there are a lot of Straw Hats in his deck, but I guess he didn't need that luck since he then plays out the best combo in this deck. 9 cost Sanji into 9 cost Linlin into returning 1 Dawn, adding the top of his life to the top of his deck, and then returning one of my own cards to the bottom of my life. And he chooses to return Frankie. He then swings 6k at my Zoro, and while I do have a few 2k counters in my hand, I don't think it's worth using one to keep him around, as I'm focused on maintaining my life and then keeping my Katakuri alive to both block with him and then use 2k counters to keep him alive if they target him after that. They then swing 9k, and I decide to block with Katakuri and use a 2k counter. They then swing 8k at life, and I decide to take the hit and add a 6 cost starter deck Luffy to my hand. We then draw for turn and add a Gum Gum Giant, which is going to be very valuable here. While we do like the power boost to 7k, we want a big body of our own on the field, so we're going to drop down the 9 cost Luffy and return 2 Dawn to activate our leader ability. And while generally we want to prioritize board control, the fact that it only has a 9k power rested character means we're going to go for life instead. So we start things off with an 8k swing from Katakuri, which he uses Gear 2 to counter out. This opens up an opportunity. Since he only has 1 card in his hand, this means a 2k power swing above will definitely KO the 9 cost Sanji. So we attach 1 Dawn to Luffy and swing 11k, getting the KO. We then leave 1 Dawn up for Gum Gum Giant, restand our Katakuri, and end our turn. He then uses his leader ability to add a Zoro to his hand before drawing an additional card for his regular draw. And then he drops down yet another Sanji and Linlin combo, which is pretty devastating for us, but something you have to be ready for when you're playing against this leader. He then activates Linlin's effect, adding the top of his deck to the top of his life, and then placing our own Zoro at the bottom of our life. He starts things off with a 6k swing from leader, and we use a 2k counter to get out. He then attaches 1 Dawn to Katakuri and swings 9k, and I decide to use Gum Gum Giant and the 1 cost Law in my hand to counter out. So I activate Gum Gum Giant, return 2 Dawn, discard Gum Gum Lightning, and then draw 2 cards, which unfortunately are Zoro and Gum Gum Lightning, who have no counter and are not cards I want to play. He then swings 9k with Sanji, and I take the hit. He then uses Linlin for his final 9k attack, and while I could block with Katakuri and then use a 2k counter, there are no cards in my hand that I currently want to play. So we take the hit and add a card we do love to see, the EBO2 Luffy. An important thing to note here is he now has a full board of 8 and higher cost characters, meaning if we don't win here, likely this turn will be our last. I don't want to reveal I have him in my hand just yet, so I start things off with an 8k swing to see how he responds. He counters with his own Katakuri, but then actually discards the last card in his hand to keep him alive. I think he was feeling safe with 3 life remaining and a full board of characters, but with no blockers and no cards in his hand, I could see a chance that we can go for game. To start things off, all we need is a 6k power swing to take the first life, so I attach 1 Dawn to leader and take it. We then drop down the 6 cost EBO2 Luffy, and with 3 Dawn still standing, this means we can attach 1 to him and swing 8k, while still returning 2 Dawn to restand him once again. And as you know, 2k is the magic number. There's no way for him to counter out of this with 1 card in his hand, so we once again take another life. Not only that, but our leader ability triggers and we get another Dawn to work with. It's at this point where things become more interesting, since an 8k swing is no longer guaranteed to hit if he has a 2k and a 1k in his hand. I decide to attach the final Dawn to the 6 cost Luffy, since he would then need 2 2ks in his hand in order to deflect. The attack goes through, and at 10k base power, our final swing means he would need 2 2ks and 1 1k in his hand in order to stop himself from losing. He doesn't have that, and we pull off the victory in a very exciting and a very close game. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has given you everything you need to know to start playing and start winning with this leader. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. And let me know in the comments below what leader you want to see next. I'll catch you next time.